Many years ago, back in the late 80s, I was a narcotics officer. In fact, ran the narcotics unit for the Bellevue Police Department. And at that time, really saw the effects or non-effects of the revolving door of clientele, and especially in the suburban areas, we had users that were going to Omaha to deal with the dealers. So I'm popping people on felonies. They may get some time, particularly back then. It was usually a probation on the first shot. And of course, they weren't getting any kind of treatment or care, or there was no opportunity for turning themselves around. So in the early 90s, when I got up to the U.S. Attorney's Office, we started looking around at what the evolving, the emerging concept of drug courts, and began helping establish, particularly in Sarpy County and in the Central Nebraska. We thought there were some good opportunities there to bring in those type of models. They weren't going to be our clientele. These were not the worst of the worst. So we weren't, cutting off ourselves. We were looking at those that had the ability or opportunity to turn around. About that same time, we got a call from law enforcement out of the Central Nebraska area. In particular, I believe it was Jerry Watson and others that called, Dan, Neil Miller, etc., with the idea to get law enforcement involved. That's who we heard from before we heard from the courts or before the county attorneys, was law enforcement. They saw the same revolving door. We went out there, were very impressed with the way they wanted to go about it, and law enforcement was going to actually take an active role, whether it was in the area of monitoring, identification, but also what their role was going to be in selection of clientele. We don't see that a lot. And to be real honest, I don't think we see it at all in Omaha, other than the county attorneys usually do a very good job of placement and know who a lot of their clientele is. But it works real well in the Central Nebraska area, where they have law enforcement that sit on these teams. So 15 years later, I hear the anecdotal, it's working. We think we have an impact in Central Nebraska. So I asked Jerry if he could come out and give us an update 15 years later. How effective is it, and what you can do in your jurisdiction to involve your law enforcement people, because there is a role they play. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Jerry and go from there.
I'm very honored to be asked, I hope this isn't too much, by Joe to spend the next hour with you or less, because he used up a lot of the time already. But I'm not going to lie to you. I'm really nervous as hell standing up here. This isn't something that I do on a regular basis. I went to work this morning. I stopped in and I got, the little tear-off calendar things that, give you the wisdom of the day. And this morning it says the entire gamut of human experience is yours to enjoy once you decide to venture into territory where you don't have any guarantees. Guess what? That's where I'm at today. And it says May 19th on there, so it's, what can I say? But I am nervous, but I'm really not nervous about what the topic, because the definition of stress is lack of preparation, and I can probably talk to you all afternoon about drug courts. But what I'm nervous about is the fact that I had you for the next hour and that you hear me, because this is important, what I want to share to you, with you. This is my opportunity, here and now. That's why I'm stressed. And for those of you that know me, I'm certain that drug court has probably been brought up a time or two in our conversations. But before we get into the meat of the topic, I feel it's important that you understand how I got on this stage today. I was elected to office back in 1998. Seems like yesterday, but some 18 years have passed. I still remember the summer of '98. I had successfully won the primary, was unopposed in the general election, So it was a foregone conclusion that I was to sit in the sheriff's chair come January. It was a warm July afternoon, some 6 months before I was to take office, and my chief deputy, Chris Ray, for those of you that know him, he's still my chief deputy today, we were out in my boat chasing those elusive largemouth bass, which I like to do a lot, by the way. And he informed me that yet I had another meeting, a request to attend another meeting. And he said this one was about drug court. And my response to him was, what the hell's drug court? And he kind of gave me a sideways look, and he says, go to the meeting and figure it out. So I did. I remember, though, my response back to him was, great, another touchy-feely, let's coddle the criminal program that will be here today and gone tomorrow. But you know what? I was an elected official, just got put into office, so I went to this meeting. As a result of that, I'm up on this stage talking to you today. I guess the thing that I still recall with that going to that meeting, the one thing that really stuck out in my mind is that drug courts had been around for 10 years, and the success rate of drug courts was 70%. This is a national statistic. That really stuck in my mind. So let me back up just a little bit. In 1998, I'd already been in this profession for 10 years. I started in 1988 as an officer with the Grand Island Police Department. Philosophically, I've always been of the mindset and the heart set that we are all human beings. My golden rule is to always treat everyone as I would want to be treated myself. Don't care who you are, everybody gets treated the same. As a result of this, many of the frequent flyers or career criminals, and y'all know who I'm talking about, that we dealt with on a daily basis, my relationship with them, I was usually on a first-name basis. So even when I caught them with their hand in the cookie jar, generally it was an immediate surrender to the obvious. And I treated them with respect, and for the most part it was reciprocated. Back in '92, when I was working the street, as a GIPD officer, I was detailed to Skagway North, which is a grocery store in Grand Island. It used to be, it's not there anymore. But I was detailed up there reference as shoplifter. Upon arriving, I noticed that it was one of our frequent flyers, Kenny W. I greeted her and she shamefully hung her head, stared at the floor, and wouldn't look me in the eye. She was caught red-handed, and it was well beyond her third offense, making it a felony. So I put my handcuffs to use and we walked to the car because she was going to jail that day. On the way to jail, she began to cry in the back of my car. And I still heard her voice in my head. She said, Jerry, I don't know what to do. This meth has me and I have to do this to survive. Lost for words, what could I say? Besides, I was trained to listen. Aren't we all, as cops, trained to listen? Especially once those handcuffs come out. You don't ask questions. But I remember her sobbing in the back of my car as I drove those 3 long miles. And as I booked her into jail, she continued to cry. And I do recall her telling her as I walked away to just hang in there, Penny. Not much of an offering for someone who swore to protect and serve. I left the jail feeling frustrated and sad that I had nothing to offer. Dr. Stephen Covey, who is a social scientist, offers the following quote on policing. Policing is one of the most noble professions. The actions of any officer in an instant can impact an individual for life and even a community for generations. Given this realization, every police officer must be centered on what is important. That being service, justice, and fundamental fairness. These are the foundational principles in which every police action must be grounded, and the nobility of policing demands the noblest of character. As I drove away that day, I felt sad and I felt frustrated. And I could do nothing more for Penny. I felt like I should. I wanted to, but I couldn't. She was part of a limited system with low success rates. I lost track of Penny. Last I knew, she had moved to Lincoln, and the last entry that I could find on her was back in 2004. Nothing since. It's not a good sign. But you know what? I guess if I had the time to ask every single person in this room why you chose to get into this profession, I would come up with many answers. But most common answer probably would be to make a difference or to help others. And after 10 years of being in this profession, and as I walked towards that sheriff's chair, I saw for just a brief moment a little glimmer of light. I chased it relentlessly, and today that glimmer has grown into what I had hoped it would be. And by the way, I chose this profession because I love being in the people business. I've been doing this for 28 years now, and my only regret is that I didn't start sooner. So let's talk about drug courts, what they are, what's your role as a law enforcement professional. Drugs affect our community, they affect our quality of life. Illicit drugs are seeking havoc on our society and our world today. 22.5 million Americans aged 12 or older were users back in 2011, and that's isn't really getting any better. These are some of the different drugs and some statistics that are a little dated, but it gives you an idea about the types of drugs. I'm preaching to the choir here. I know you all know this already. But the drug-related crimes in our communities, thefts from vehicles, shoplifting, forgeries, burglaries, what have you, all of these can be connected to an addiction, okay? And they do affect the quality of life in our communities. Now, it's time that we wake up. Wake up, Nebraska. Tell me, how many crimes a year does the average drug addict commit? This is a national statistic. The answer is 63. On average, 63. What do you think the cost of incarcerating someone for a year is? The answer to that, $35,590 a year back in 2012. That equates out to $97.51 a day. This also doesn't include the fact that they're declared indigent and the council is providing additional costs to the courts. In our current criminal justice system, this is how it goes. The arrest, the arraignment, preliminary hearing, the trial, guilty or not guilty. If guilty, sentenced to jail or probation. If sentenced, probably released with half the time, if not more. A good time. And then they serve their time, complete probation, released back into the mainstream and supervised. That's our system. Everybody knows that at this point. Okay? Let's talk about probation. Probation, and I'm not silent probation. Okay? Probation is overwhelmed and has limited resources. Okay? So don't take it like I'm slamming probation. They average over 100 cases per officer. Our local average, last I checked, it was about 70. I can't imagine being given that many people and saying you've got to keep track of these people and have contact with them once a month. If you do it, I don't think I could. Intensive probation. State average, 25 cases per officer. Locally, 30 to 50 in our jurisdiction. So the typical drug-using offender spends an average of 3 months in jail, yet 24 months on probation while living in our community. So, different adjectives to describe our current system. Well, here's just a few. Expensive, nobody's going to argue with that. Redundant, overwhelmed, about ineffective. Wake up. What we've been doing is recycling our criminals. It's basically what we do. We arrest, we adjudicate, we incarcerate, or they're found not guilty, they released, they go back out, they reoffend. Over and over they go. So, problem-solving courts. More specific to this region in Central Nebraska is the Central Nebraska Drug Court. Central Nebraska Drug Court covers Buffalo, Phelps, Kearney, Adams, and Hall counties. We started actually back in 2002 is when we took our first client. But here's the staff for Central Nebraska Drug Court. Todd Rosno, who I made him come today because he's sitting over there in my chair keeping it warm, in case I could ask questions logistically that I'm just not quite up on. He's here as a resource for me. But let's talk about drug courts. It's not a new concept. It was started back in 1989 by Janet Rito in South Florida. Again, as I mentioned earlier, 70% of all offenders entering the program that completed are staying clean. They're staying away from drugs, they're staying away from crime, they're becoming contributors to society, okay? And the cost to run them through the program, on average, is $2,500 to $4,000 per participant. Compare that to what it costs to incarcerate. I don't think I need to tell you which is the better. Okay? But in a drug court system, basically a felony crime has been committed and they're arrested. They're advised of the program once they're incarcerated and made aware of it. If they say they want to do it, then we conduct an intake interview. We send, Todd usually goes over and does them for Central Nebraska, but we want to make certain that we're putting people in the program that have an addiction problem. Okay? We do have people that try to get into it that don't, and they don't qualify, they don't get in. But then the applicant screening, and this is important because county attorneys, this is your game. This is what you decide who gets in and who doesn't, okay? Drug courts is a program, kind of like Joe said, they're for people who we should be mad at, not for people who we should be afraid of. There's a distinct difference, okay? So what the county attorney does the screening, makes the presentation to the staffing team, and then a decision is made. They arrange, once they've decided they're screened and they're coming in, then they're arraigned in court. When they're arraigned in court, they plead guilty to the charge. Okay? And then what the judge does is he or she sets aside sentencing pending successful completion of the drug court program. They enter into the program, and it's at minimum an 18-month program. And after that, they complete or they fail the program. Now, what happens if they fail the program? Well, they plead guilty. They're going to jail. So what this is coerced treatment. Okay? Point blank, plain and simple. But if they do complete the program, the charges, the county attorney moves to dismiss the charge, and it's gone. This is after 18 months. So that's how the drug court system works. And I'll get more into this. But if they fail, again, they go to prison. Okay? They're sentenced to jail. So there are 7 requirements for a drug court participant. First of all, they got to attend court weekly. We've got 4 different phases in our drug court. And phase 1, they're in court every Friday. It's a district court. They come up and have to look the judge in the eye, and if they basically hold them accountable. The other thing they got to do is the regular drug testing. We test them in phase 1 3 times a week at a minimum, and these are random tests. They have to get up every morning. They got to call into the testing line by 6 o'clock, and then they report before 7 o'clock for their test and get the test that day. Backing up, it's phase 1 is every week. Phase 2 is every other week. Phase 3, as they graduate up, go through the system. Phase 3, I think, is once a month. Is that right? And then phase 4 is as needed. Okay. But anyway, the regular drug testing, we do that. Another thing they gotta do before they can graduate is they gotta find a job. If they don't have a job, they gotta find a job. They have to attend the moral recognition therapy. This basically is a therapy that self-assessment tool where they look at themselves, they figure out why they're at, where they're at in life right now, and they hopefully will learn some coping skills so they don't continue down the path that they are. And our staff teaches that. They have to also attend NA or AA meetings, so many a week, and that's up to the judge to determine how many of those meetings they need to attend, and as they come to court every week, they have to present their card to show how many times they attended. If they don't have their diploma, they have to get their GED. Also, they have to pay fees to the court. We charge our participants $25 a week. Remember the $2,500 to $4,000 number, what it costs? They're paying half of that. So it's even better than that number that was indicated. Those are the 7 requirements for drug court participants. Our role, law enforcement's role, well, we have law enforcement on our staffing team. We're at every drug court staffing, and I'll get more into exactly what that is in a minute. We're another set of eyes and ears for the drug court supervision staff. They can't be everywhere. Okay? But we are out on routine patrol. We know who the participants are, and we build that communication. We can be the eyes and ears for them to help. We assist supervision staff on searches. What does that mean? Well, part of the voluntary agreement, it's a voluntary agreement. This is a voluntary program. It's not a mandate. What they sign says that any drug court staff member can come show up at any time, day or night, and they consent to search the premises. And if there's issues going on or we've got questions, then if we hear things are going on, then they'll usually call the cops and say, can you help us on the search? So basically, what law enforcement role of the drug courts are is to help to hold the participants accountable. Now, this is the staffing team. How drug court works is this way. Like in Hall County, and I'm going to speak to Hall County because that's probably the one I'm most familiar with, is every Friday morning at 8 o'clock, we have staffing. And right now in Hall County, we probably have 36, I think, in Hall County right now in the program. But the different phases will figure out who's reporting that morning. And all of these different individuals are around the table, actually in the courtroom. The judge sits in, and we've got a county attorney, we have workforce like Goodwill, HHS can be there, schools, community treatment providers, of course law enforcement and defense counsel. We sit and we staff each individual, and we talk about what's going on. We know what's going on in their life. The supervisors for the drug court are there, and they're saying, well, here's Jimmy John, and he's not supposed to be hanging with so-and-so, but we had an issue because he got caught with so-and-so, and law enforcement says, yeah, last Wednesday he was with so-and-so also. And well, how's he doing with work? Well, the workforce people can say, well, he's showing up and doing what he needs to be doing. So it's this collaborative communication so that we're all on the same page, so we know what Jimmy John's doing, so that we can hold him accountable. He does good, and he gets patted on the back and say, go forth and continue. If he does bad, he tested dirty, he gets sanctioned. Sanctions can run from community service all the way up to incarceration. That's part of the agreement they signed. The incarceration is progressive. It starts out 2 days, 5 days, 7 days. I think they get five bites out of that apple before they're terminated out of the program. Okay? When they come into this program, we expect them to test dirty. We know they got a problem. It takes about 30 days, 60 days, where you'll see the light come on. When they first sign up for this program, anybody that knows a meth addict knows that manipulation is probably one of their biggest tools. When they sign up for the program, they say, you know what, that's easier than jail, I'll do it. I can get in here and I can manipulate my way through it. But after a time, you can see, once they figure out, hey, I got people watching me, I can't get away with nothing. But, and eventually the little light comes on, they figure out, you know, this, I'm getting a second chance. And isn't that what we're really all about? Not how many people we can lock up in jail, but how many people we can help. We don't want criminals. We want good, tax-paying, contributing people in our society. That's after all, that's what our goal is. But like I said, you got to be another set of eyes and ears for the drug court supervision staff. So how do you do that? In our daily routine of patrols, we run across participants. Are they doing what they're supposed to be? Are they hanging out with people they shouldn't be? Because the court says you can hang out with so-and-so, but you can't hang out with the people that we know who the good influences are and who aren't. And if they're on probation or they're on parole, they cannot be hanging around with those individuals. Also, they could be restricted to where they can and can't be. They cannot travel out of county without getting permission from the court. And every week we have travel requests. I want to go to my little brother's birthday in Seward. And it'll go before the court and the judge will either grant the request or not. That's part of the roles. We can't be everywhere. Drug court staff can't be everywhere to monitor. But you know what? There are cops out all the time. How do we do this? Again, this is backing up for the assisting on the search. And like I said, they sign the voluntary agreement to show up and do consent searches. And if we hear any rumblings of anything that might be happening, we are showing up and doing those searches. But, excuse me, this is another thing that we do here in Central Nebraska. Police Intel. It's a web-based information sharing program that there's 14 of us, actually known as a scales organization, but we're all hooked up to this. It's like an electronic briefing board. We're all putting our information on it, and it's shared amongst those 14 agencies. Some of it is internal, some of it can be posted to the feed so that Lexington can see what I'm doing, and Hastings can see what Kearney's doing, and so on and so forth. We share information. Well, what I do on this, you can see that little icon right there. It says drug court. Every other week, I'm posting the names of individuals in the drug court program. And I know that's a little hard to read, but basically this is the whole list is there. And it's for all of the counties the 5 counties that are in drug court have access to this list. So they know who the participants are in Hall County, Buffalo County, Phelps County, Kearney County, and Adams County. They know who those individuals are. And you know what? It's just the opposite of what you would think, because you would think, we actually see the law enforcement are like, oh yeah, you're in the drug court, you're making a money. That's good. That's good. And so it's very positive. But what makes a program like drug court work? Well, it's the immediate accountability. If they show up for jail or for court on Friday, they know that they've screwed up. They're cuffed right then and there, and they're taken to jail. There's no other process involved. It's that immediate accountability. It's also that strict judicial monitoring. The drug court judges, and in Central Nebraska Drug Court, we've got 4. Judge Illingworth, Judge Wright, Judge Luther, and Judge Young. And they all do an exceptional job. They're very, very vested into the drug court and it's probably one of their proudest projects, in my opinion. But also the strict supervision. We will not let our caseloads get up above, what is it, Todd? We're usually around 30 to 40. It ain't gonna happen. We're not taking on more. It's too much. We can't provide the product. Also, the peer support. Because, like I said, in Hall County right now, we've got 36 in Hall County in the program. They lean on each other. They're going through this together. They're trying to get successful together. So they lean on each other. And they see the good things that happen to the people that are doing well in the program. They see the things that the people getting sanctioned that are screwing up in the program. So the peer support is another thing. But also, probably the biggest thing, what makes it work, is knowing that if they fail the program, they're going to jail. Okay? They've already pled guilty. There's no trial involved. It's a done deal, people. But drug court participants named these that led to their success: the close supervision and encouragement of the judges, the intensive treatment, and also that ongoing monitoring. These are the three things that the participants said were important to them. Let's talk about Central Nebraska Drug Court. Currently in the program in the 5-county area, we have 105 are graduates. As of last Thursday, we graduated 31 more, so we are at 449 graduates. This is how many people we've had voluntarily withdraw. We've had people come into the program who said, you know what, I think I can manipulate my way through this. But after they're being held accountable, all at once they'll throw their hands up and say, send me to jail, because they're going to be hacked on these doing this. Terminations. We terminated 147 out of the program. They weren't ready. The difference between a voluntary withdrawal and a termination is they're not eligible to come back in. Voluntary withdrawal, yeah, they can come back in. That's really up to the county attorney. We've served 770 people since we started some 12, 13 years ago. Our recidivism rate. In Central Nebraska, 87% of the people, 87% of those 449 graduates are still criminally back. That's huge. That works. That's where I would want Kearney to be. We collected in fees in 2015, $103,051.30. And I'm a stickler on that, because that's paying it forward for the next group of people that want to come through. This is the number of drug tests that we completed in 2015, 20,625. That's a lot of people. Average cost per participant, $3,149.92. This is good. This is a successful program. But this is what drug courts are, and I'm not going to read it to you. I think that anybody, by the way, if you want a copy of my PowerPoint, I'd be happy to provide it for you. Give me your card. If you've got a business card, give me your card. But let's talk about drug courts on a national perspective. In 1989, the first one was started in South Florida by Janet Reno. In 1995, that number grew to 75. In 2000, to 665. 2004, 1,621. 2,459 in 2009, and in 2014 it's 3,778. Do you see a trend? They're catching on. They work. It's going to be a part of the way we do business. Here is a snapshot. Problem-solving courts, basically, drug courts are just as I described to you. The problem-solving courts Instead of looking at the individual tree, we're looking at the forest, because they're opening up this type of a model to all of these different types of drug courts. We have reentry courts, gun courts, community courts, mental health courts, which I think that right there would be a big one with a lot of the issues that we have. Like domestic violence, prostitution, and the list goes on. And most recently here in the state of Nebraska, Veterans Court. Veterans Court is going to be starting, I believe, in Douglas County. I believe the legislature passed a bill and appropriated money to start a Veterans Court in Omaha. And for the next 2 years, the money has been appropriated for that. But this is a snapshot from a national perspective of what we're looking at. Drug courts are operational at this point in all 50 states, including DC, Guam, and Puerto Rico. And at any one time, 70,000 drug court clients are being served in the U.S. More than 19,900 participants graduated back in 2005. Just a real quick history of Nebraska problem-solving courts. Back in, like I said, the first court was established in 1989 down in South Florida by Janet Reno. Then in 97, the first drug court in Nebraska, actually the 13th in the nation, was established down in Douglas County. And that was a post-adjudication court, I believe. And I think that has since changed. But in 2000 to 2003, several drug courts opened in Nebraska. That would include Central Nebraska Drug Court. We opened up in 2002, March of 2002. Here in 2003, LB 454 was passed by the legislature, officially recognizing the existence of drug courts, and then also signed the rules promulgated by the Nebraska Supreme Court. And then in 2005, probation, they basically, this bill was passed to allow probation personnel to work with non-probation-based programs, including drug courts. Continuing on, 2005, the statewide coordinator for problem-solving courts was hired to oversee drug courts, or problem-solving courts. That is Scott Carlson. Scott was, I was actually on the hiring committee for him, with him, or hiring him, I should say. And then in 2006, both Congressman Osborne and Senator Hagel were very involved in helping to keep grant funding available through BJA, and actually that was looking to get cut, and they were instrumental in getting that reinitiated. In 2006, also for the first time, the Nebraska State Legislature appropriated general funds of $2 million a year for the problem-solving courts. So money is being appropriated to support the programs. I can tell you with Central Nebraska Drug Court, we operate on about a $415,000 budget. That's what it costs us to run the program. And of that number, we get $212,800 from the state to support it. As I showed you earlier, we get $103,000 in participant fees. And the rest, we do a census on the 5 counties, and we say, okay, we've got 100 people, let's just say for easy figuring, 100 people in the program. Everybody here's got 25, and these two got, and it's just percentage. Whatever the shortfall is, every county board makes up the difference. So for instance, last year, Hall County put in about $30,000 to support a $415,000 program. But money well spent. 2007, Nebraska Supreme Court approves rules governing establishing operation of drug courts and creates the Nebraska Supreme Court Committee on Problem-Solving Courts, which I was privileged to be asked to be on that, and I am. And then in 2008, the drug court statutes were modified to include other problem-solving courts because they know where this trend is headed. And then the MIS system was implemented for all of the drug courts, or all the drug courts across the state at this point are all on the same management information system. And then there was some performance measures, basically, that came in and did some assessments through these different grants. And then in 2016, just recently this year, in the bills 219, 219A, which continues to broaden the definition of problem-solving courts and appropriated funding for the Veterans Court, like I said, in Douglas County, and this bill was signed by the governor on April 12th. So we're heading down that way. But here's a map of the state of Nebraska, and this shows right now we've got 25 problem-solving courts in existence across the state. And I know there are more in the works. I believe York County, that's the judicial district, I think it's District 5. I believe Merritt County, York County, Polk, and Hamilton County, I think they're all going together. Is that right, Mark? You guys are talking about them? Merritt and Hamilton. Okay. So I know there's others that are being looked at, and they're still coming on. So that's just kind of a snapshot for you there. But anyway, in Nebraska, problem-solving courts serve about 1,200 participants a year. Average length of time in the court is 1.5 to 2 years. In our court, it's probably closer to 2 years. Approximately 300 participants graduate within a given year, and then they're drug-free babies. That's a big thing. It really is. When a participant, when someone is pregnant and they're using drugs, the baby's using drugs. Right? And we gauge our victories. In fact, last Thursday we had a graduation in Hastings, and we graduated 31 out of the program, and we had a drug-free baby. And the drug-free baby was there. And that was pretty darn good. And I'll tell you what else. When I need my batteries charged, I go to those graduations, because you know what? He gave them a second chance. They succeeded. There's family members there. There's kids there. There's mom or dad that's gone through the program. You've given all of these people back to one another. And isn't that what we're really all about, what we're trying to do? So, and then again, on the employment issue, they can get a job, and they're either pursuing or getting it done. And then the community service. The other thing that I didn't mention is that when they come into the program, very rarely do they have a job. They're unemployed. A lot of them are homeless. And when they come into the program, if they're assessed and they have to do inpatient or outpatient, once they get beyond that, they can say, well, I'm trying to get a job, but I can't get a job. If they can't get a job, you know what they got to do? They got to go out and they got to work 40 hours. In community service, they have to bring the paperwork into the judge every Friday and say, yeah, I'm going to go to St. Mary's and I sorted clothes, or I did this, or I did that. They have to bring that document. We're making them work one way or the other, okay, when they come into the program. So community service is a big thing. But for every $3, we saved approximately $3 for every dollar that we spend on drug courts here in Nebraska. So the verdict is in, drug courts do work. 75%, that number, 70% that I talked about at the beginning is up to 75% now. It is better. And they did 75% of the people going through these programs are staying. So, drug courts save money. Again, for every dollar invested, you save over 3. And there's a little bit more cost savings. These cost savings are from reduced prison costs and the revolving door arrests and trials, and reduces the victimization as well. But again, like I said, for parents that are in the program have kids, twice as likely to go to treatment completely. And there's some other interesting. It turns addicts, like I said, into mom and dad, and those productive, contributing members of society, givers instead of takers. Not a new way of thinking. It's not soft on crime, it's smart on crime. Think about it. Think about what we're doing now. Are we really making any headway? It's not, it's a new way of attacking the problem because basic economics are going to tell you, you know what, since back in the Reagan years, we've been battling this war on drugs and we're attacking the supply. And for every time we go out and we make a good bust and we take it down, it comes right back. In some cases even stronger. Okay, so we need to continue to attack the supply. But now, in addition to that, we need to attack the demand, because if there's nobody using, who are they going to sell it to? Are we going to make it go away? No. It's going to be here. It's been here for hundreds of years and it'll never go completely away. But we can make our communities a better, safer place and increase our quality of life in each of our communities by doing. We're like they said in that video, we're not going to arrest our way out of this situation. We can't build another prison. So it's time to think outside the box because drug courts do work.
Before regular visits inside a drug court, participants become regulars to a lifestyle, one filled with drugs, police, and addiction.
I think when you look at a person like Jeff or Jason, you see someone who had no value other than, you know, how am I going to find my meth today?
Jeff and Jason's addiction was methamphetamines. The proof, the photo ID they took before entering drug court.
The more severe the addiction, the more obvious the addiction is just from the physical appearance of the person.
You know, people that actually cared about me, but, you know, were tired of seeing me slowly kill myself.
To be honest, towards the end, it didn't do much for me. It just became something I did every day to get out of bed to wake up, or even if I went to bed.
Jeff and Jason's addiction each spanned about 18 years. Across the nation, drug abusers spend big money on illegal drugs. $36 billion on cocaine, $11 billion on marijuana, and $10 billion are spent on heroin. Last on our list, $5.4 billion spent on methamphetamines. But for Jeff and Jason, it's the drug of choice here in the heartland.
I spent a lot of times at the bars, or at my house. I've lost some really good relationships because of the drugs.
I felt like I didn't, you know, I couldn't function without it. When I was using it, it kind of gave me a feeling of invincibility, you know, like I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof.
They don't have the things that they valued in life before they were addicted to meth.
For Jeff and Jason, meth was their life for so many years, not only at home, but in some degree at the workplace.
You know, I had a hard time finding a job, but was still stuck in my addiction, so yeah, I did sell it too. I sold it and had a full-time job to support my habit. Yeah, I mean, I worked side by side with people that were using too.
I hid it very well. I had two totally different lifestyles. Kind of, you know, one at work and then one completely different outside of work. It's like juggling two lives.
If we can take that person out of that lifestyle and restore that person as an active, functioning human being, then we have done something for another member of humanity that is very good and very well worth our investment.
In fact, it's an 18-month-long investment in the Central Nebraska Drug Court.
That's probably the one thing that saved my life.
I think my fear of staying where I was greater than my fear of change.
After a lifelong addiction of buying and selling, life on and off the streets, it comes down to either 18 months in a drug court or time behind bars. For these two, the choice was clear.
I don't have to. I want to. It was my choice to enter the drug court. I asked for it. So it's more of a, I want to.
I'd say give them a second chance, because you never know. You know, I mean, I knew it was time. I knew it was time for me to change my life, or I was going to be dead.
Addiction is the main problem here. And certainly if there is not an addiction, they're not going to be a participant in drug court because that's one of the requirements.
There's requirements in order to stay in drug court as well. You've got to attend court weekly, undergo regular drug testing, find employment, attend Narcotics and Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Also, you've got to get your GED. Jeff and Jason are in the program right now. They go to court and get drug tested regularly. They know that if you fail, it means jail.
I still think about using, you know, that's not something that goes away. I still think about it. But when I think about it, I think of my family, which is probably my biggest thing, and where I was, where I've been, the lifestyle I've had. As long as I keep that stuff in the back of my head, you know, I think I should do all right.
And like I said, it helps you stay accountable. You know, one little mess up and they're not gonna let you slide on anything, which is actually kind of what I needed.
The more people that go through the program and are successful, and successful not only in being free of substance abuse problems, but also successful in reuniting with their families, providing support for their families.
That's one of the most important things in my life, right there, being able to see my daughter starting to become a part of her life again. You know, because I miss that.
Because my son's 10 years old. I started using 2 years, you know, 2 years away from how old he is now. And kind of scares me.
Proof Drug Court is working to keep those in Central Nebraska free from the life they knew all too well.
That sometimes just convicting somebody of a crime and putting them in prison doesn't solve the problem.
The biggest thing I see when I see someone out of drug court doing well is that they have some pride.
If they knew how I was before and they see how I am now, they'll see that given a second chance, somebody can really do a 180 with their life.
It keeps me grounded. I have to be kept accountable for the things I do, the actions I do, and that's probably the one thing that saved my life.
I think the video kind of says it all. And you know, in closing here, because I'm just about, give me a couple of minutes, I'll be done. You know, recently I attended and got my national certification to teach Blue Courage. So I'm a Blue Courage instructor, but for those of you that don't know what Blue Courage is, it's policing 95% of the time with a guardian mindset. And it's 5% of the time and only when necessary with a warrior mindset. Blue Courage also teaches people in a profession how to take care of themselves so that you can add longevity into a long, successful career. So it's a great program, and it's funded through the BGA, and it's only a couple of years old, but nonetheless, when I went to this a couple of weeks ago and got my certification, I want to share a story that I shared with that class a couple of weeks ago. It comes from the book, The Nobility of Policing, Guardians of Democracy. It was written by Michael Neela, who is actually the father of Blue Courage, and he was one of my instructors. But real quickly, I'm going to read this. I need my glasses. Your actions always matter to someone. Once upon a time, there was a wise man who would go to the ocean to do his writing. He had a habit of walking on the beach before he began his work. One day, as he was walking along the shore, he looked down the beach and saw a human figure moving like a dancer. As he got closer, he noticed the figure was that of a young man, and that he wasn't dancing at all. The young man was reaching down, picking up small objects and throwing them into the ocean. He came closer and still called out, "Good morning. May I ask what it is you're doing?" The young man replied, throwing starfish into the ocean. I must ask then, why are you throwing starfish into the ocean? Said the somewhat startled wise man. To this the young man replied, well, the sun is up and the tide is going out, and if I don't throw them in, they'll die. Upon hearing this, the wise man commented, but young man, do you not realize there are miles and miles of beach and there are starfish along every mile? You can't possibly make a difference. At this, the young man bent down, picked up yet another starfish, and threw it into the ocean. As it met the water, he said, made a difference to that one. So that's how it's done. One at a time, back into the ocean they go. Some 450 lives in Central Nebraska have changed one at a time. I'm standing here before you today to tell you that drug courts work. Look for the one near you and get involved. Make a difference, one at a time. And I thank you for tolerating me for the last hour.